The morning sun was a brutal spotlight on my desk, highlighting every dust mote dancing in the air, every coffee stain on my mug, every wrinkle on my shirt. Tomorrow I had to review Liam's performance. Liam, my new intern. Liam, the reason my stomach felt like a knot of barbed wire. Liam, my wife's secret boyfriend. Yeah, you read that right. The world decided to play a cruel joke, and I was the punchline. My wife Sarah and Liam. It still sounded absurd, a bad line from a terrible movie script, but it was real. And it was destroying me from the inside out. It all started so innocent. We needed an intern for the marketing department, someone fresh out of college, eager to learn. My boss, a man who believed in synergy and disruptive innovation more than actual human beings, tasked me with finding one. Liam's resume landed on my desk. Impressive for a kid his age. He had done some volunteer work, a few small projects, straight A's. He seemed like the perfect fit, even reminded me a little of myself. Years ago, when I was full of that boundless energy and naive ambition. He started a month ago. He was bright, enthusiastic, maybe a little too confident for an intern, but I chalked it up to youthful exuberance. He picked things up fast, asked smart questions, and genuinely seemed interested in the work. He was charming too, effortlessly friendly with everyone in the office. He even managed to get our notoriously grumpy receptionist to crack a smile. I remember thinking, this kid is going places. My home life with Sarah had been a slow burn for a while. Not a raging fire, more like embers cooling in a grate. We'd been together for 15 years, married for 10. The initial spark had faded, replaced by comfortable routine, shared silences, and separate lives lived under the same roof. We drifted. I blamed work, she blamed my distance. We both blamed the unspoken things that piled up between us like unread mail. We still said I love you, but it felt like a habit, not a declaration. The first hint, the tiny crack in my perfectly constructed reality, came last week. Sarah had been acting a little differently. More secretive with her phone, more excuses for late nights. Girls' night out, yoga retreat, helping a friend move. I tried not to be suspicious. We trusted each other, or so I thought. Then one evening, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to take a shower. It buzzed. A notification flashed on the screen. It was a text message preview. The name was unfamiliar, L-Boy. The message itself was short, innocuous enough. Can't wait for tomorrow night, my place. My stomach dropped. L-Boy? Who was Motherboy? I tried to tell myself it was a friend, a new acquaintance. But the casual intimacy of the message, the my place, felt wrong. My heart started thumping like a drum solo. I fought the urge to grab the phone, unlock it, and scroll through everything. I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the screen until it went dark. The next day, the Moy thing nagged at me like a persistent toothache. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept replaying the text. During our morning team meeting, Liam walked in, a bit late, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. He smiled, a flash of white teeth, and apologized to me directly. Morning, Mark. Sorry, slept in a little. Something in his voice, something in the way he looked, clicked in my mind. Lead boy. Liam. It was too much of a coincidence. My blood ran cold. Number, it couldn't be. It was impossible. He was just a kid, barely out of college. Sarah was almost 40. But the thought, once planted, began to grow like a malignant tumor. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, watching Liam, watching Sarah's behavior when she called me. He seemed perfectly normal, attentive, asking about project details. She seemed distant, a little too cheerful, asking about my day in a way that felt forced. The pieces, once scattered, slowly started to align in a horrific pattern. The final, undeniable proof came yesterday. It was Saturday. Sarah had told me she was going to a yoga retreat an hour out of town. I was supposed to have a quiet day catching up on chores, but I felt this awful dread, this suffocating suspicion. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I know, it sounds like something from a cheap detective novel, but I was desperate. I needed to prove myself wrong, to put this terrifying idea to rest. I kept a safe distance, following her car through suburban streets, past strip malls, and finally into a quiet residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. She pulled into a driveway, a house I'd never seen. And then Liam walked out. He was wearing a casual t-shirt and shorts, looking relaxed and familiar. He leaned into her car window, said something that made her laugh. A genuine, unrestrained laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. He opened the passenger door and she got out, slung her arm around his waist, and they walked into the house together, hand in hand. His house. The my place from the text. The world tilted on its axis. The air left my lungs. My vision blurred. It was them. It was Liam. My intern. My wife. My life, neatly packaged and thrown into a dumpster fire. I sat there in my car, parked down the street, watching the door close behind them, watching my entire universe collapse into dust. I drove home on autopilot, the numbness slowly giving way to a searing rage, then a profound, agonizing grief. I barely remember how I got back. I just remember the silence of our house, the way it echoed my emptiness. Sarah came home late that night, smelling faintly of something unfamiliar. Not yoga or friend's house. She told me about her retreat, about how relaxing it was. I just nodded, a hollow shell of a man. I couldn't even look her in the face. And now, here I am. Monday morning. The office. Liam, 2 desks away, typing away, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. He was still the charming, bright intern, oblivious to the fact that I knew. Oblivious to the fact that tomorrow, I had to sit him down, face to face, and give him a performance review. A performance review for the man sleeping with my wife. The irony was so bitter it made my teeth ache. How do you objectively review someone's work when you want to punch them in the face? How do you pretend everything is normal when your entire world is on fire? Tomorrow was going to be hell. The next few hours at work were a blur of forced smiles and internal scream. Every time Liam laughed, every time he asked a question, every time he moved within my peripheral vision, a fresh wave of nausea washed over me. I tried to focus on my tasks, to drown out the noise in my head, but it was like trying to empty the ocean with a tea. My hands felt clammy, my jaw ached from clenching, and a dull throb had settled behind my eyes. I kept replaying the scene from Saturday, Sarah and Liam, hand in hand, walking into his house. The casual intimacy, the genuine laughter, it was a dagger twisting in my gut. Sarah and I hadn't laughed like that, not genuinely, not in public, in what felt like forever. Had this been going on for a long time? Had I been blind? Or had I just chosen to ignore the signs? My mind raced, trying to find a loophole, a rational explanation. Maybe it wasn't Liam's house. Maybe he was just visiting a friend who lived there, and Sarah was also visiting the same friend. But that didn't explain the my place text, or the way they walked in. So comfortable with each other, like they belonged together. And it definitely didn't explain the arm around his waist, the leaning in for a laugh. No, my gut knew. This wasn't some innocent misunderstanding. This was betrayal, raw and ugly. I tried to deny it, to push it away. Liam was barely 23. Sarah was 38. The age difference alone felt scandalous. How could she? And with my intern, the sheer audacity of it, the disrespect. It felt like a deliberate slap in the face, not just to me, but to our entire history. I started to subtly observe both of them. At work, Liam seemed the same, focused on his tasks, occasionally asking for clarification or offering an idea. Was he unusually quiet today, or was that just my paranoia projecting? He didn't look at me strangely. He didn't seem nervous or guilty. He seemed normal. That was almost worse. It meant he was either a master manipulator, or he truly believed I knew nothing. Given his age, I leaned towards the latter. Probably thought he was invincible, that their little secret was perfectly safe. My observations of Sarah were equally agonizing. When she called during my lunch break, her voice was light, casual. "Hey, honey, how's your day going?" I mumbled something non-committal. "Good," she replied. "Mine too. Just thinking about dinner tonight. Should we order in?" Her tone was so normal, so devoid of any telltale signs. It made my blood run cold. Was she that good at lying? Or was she so disconnected from me that she didn't even register the shift in my demeanor, the tremor in my voice? I thought back to how we met. Sarah and I had been college sweethearts. We met at a campus party, clichés be damned. She was studying literature, I was in business. We clicked instant. She had this vibrant energy, a quick wit, and a laugh that could light up a room. We were inseparable. We dreamt of building a life together, a house, a family, a future. We got married shortly after graduation, full of hopes and dreams. The early years were tough but exhilarating. We supported each other through career changes, financial struggles, the usual ups and downs of young adulthood. We bought our first house, a fixer-upper, and poured our weekends into renovating it. We built a life brick by brick, shared memory by shared memory. When did the cracks appear? Was it when my job started demanding more of my time, pulling me away late nights and weekends? Was it when she became engrossed in her own volunteer work, her own circle of friends? Or was it earlier, a slow, imperceptible erosion like water wearing down a stone? We hadn't had a truly intimate conversation in months, maybe even a year. Our sex life had dwindled to almost nothing. We'd stopped going on dates. Our evenings were spent on separate sofas, scrolling through separate phones, occasionally exchanging polite, empty remarks about our day. I told myself it was just a phase, the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. I'd told myself we were comfortable, secure. Now I knew it was something far more sinister. Apathy. The slow death of a connection. And into that void, Liam had stepped. He wasn't overtly handsome, not in the classic movie star way, but he had an easy charm, a youthful vitality that I, at 42, probably lacked. He was enthusiastic, optimistic, probably listened to her, really listened, something I had perhaps forgotten how to do amidst the demands of my career. He probably made her feel young and desired, feelings that might have long since atrophied in our marriage. The thought of them together, the image burned into my mind, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. What were they doing in his house? What had they done? The specifics were agonizing, a torment I couldn't escape. Was he better than me? Was he giving her something I couldn't? The self-doubt was as sharp as the betrayal. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, nodding at colleagues, typing out emails. But my mind was stuck in a loop of despair and fury. I kept glancing at Liam, trying to discern something, anything, in his movements, his expressions, that would give him away. But he remained a polite, diligent intern, completely unaware of the volcano simmering beneath my surface. The clock inched forward, minute by agonizing minute. The performance review was tomorrow. I had to face him. I had to sit across from him in the small glass-walled conference room and discuss his future with the company, my company. Company I'd poured my life into, almost as much as I'd poured into my marriage, and he was casually dismantling both. I went home that evening, the silence of the house even more deafening than usual. Sarah was already there, cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, a domestic scene that felt utterly grotesque. She greeted me with a peck on the cheek, a practiced gesture that felt devoid of any warmth. "Rough day?" she asked, not really looking at me. "You could say that," I muttered, my voice rough. I went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and leaned against the counter, watching her. Her back was to me, her shoulders hunched slightly as she chopped vegetables. She seemed oblivious, or perhaps she was too good an actress. I wondered if she felt any guilt, any remorse. Did she ever think about me, about her life when she was with him? The beer tasted like ash. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash some. I wanted to confront her right then and there, lay out the evidence, watch her face crumble. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. I was too raw, too broken, and I still had tomorrow to get through. The performance review. It was my arena now, my chance to control something, anything, in this crumbling wreck of a life. And I had no idea what I was going to do with it. The night stretched before me, long and cold, filled with sleepless hours and the chilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The night was a torment. Swim was a distant dream replaced by a relentless replay of images. Sarah and Liam walking into his house, the text message, the casual lies. My mind spun, trying to grasp onto something solid, some way to make sense of the madness. But there was no sense to be found, just pain and a burning desire for answers. I wanted to confront them both immediately, but the thought was paralyzing. What would I say? What if Sarah denied it, called me crazy, said I was imagining things? What if Liam played innocent? I had photographic proof in my mind, but not anything tangible to wave in their faces. Not yet, and even if I did, what then? Divorce. A scene at the office? The thought of the fallout, the public humiliation, the sheer wreckage of my life held me back. I was trapped between an unbearable truth and an equally unbearable confrontation. So, I started planning. Not a confrontation, but an investigation. A way to get more proof, to peel back the layers of deception. I needed to understand the scope of this betrayal, how long it had been going on, how deeply entrenched it was. At the office the next morning, the air felt heavy, charged with an invisible electricity that only I could feel. Liam was already at his desk, typing furiously. He looked up, gave me a friendly wave. "Morning, Mark." His voice was bright, innocent. It grated on my nerves. I forced a smile, a hollow mask over my fury. "Morning, Liam. Ready for the big review today?" My voice was calm, too calm, almost robotic. I watched his reaction closely. Did he flinch? Did a flicker of nervousness cross his face? Nothing, just a confident grin. "As I'll ever be, boss. I think I've done some good work this month." My stomach churned. Good work? He was sleeping with my wife. Was that part of his good work as well? The audacity was breathtaking. I spent the morning testing him subtly. I walked by his desk more often than usual, making small talk, asking seemingly innocuous questions. "How was your weekend, Liam? Anything exciting happen?" He paused, then shrugged. A casual gesture. "Pretty chill, actually. Caught up on some sleep, did some laundry. Standard boring stuff, you know. He didn't even blink. He was either an expert liar or truly believed I was clueless. The latter seemed more likely. Kids his age. They often think they're invisible, that their actions have no consequences. I then tried a different tack. I brought up a hypothetical situation in a team meeting. Something about workplace ethics and personal conduct. It's important, folks, I stated, looking directly at Liam, to remember that our actions outside of work can sometimes impact our professional standing. Maintaining integrity even in our personal lives reflects on the company. Anything that could create a conflict of interest or reflect poorly on our brand needs to be considered seriously. Liam nodded thoughtfully, as if absorbing my wisdom. He even chimed in, "Absolutely, Mark. Professionalism extends beyond office hours. Maintaining a good reputation is key, especially in our industry." The words felt like a punch to the gut. He was spouting the very principles he was violating. Was he mocking me? Or was he truly so deluded, so caught up in his own sense of invincibility, that he didn't see the hypocrisy? I leaned towards the latter again. Youthful arrogance was a powerful shield. My plan for the performance review began to solidify. I couldn't just fire him without cause, not legally, not without raising questions. And I couldn't expose him without exposing Sarah, and the resulting scandal would shatter my professional life as much as my personal one. But I could use the review as a tool, a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. I needed to gather information, to confirm the depth of the deception and to make him squirm. I wouldn't explicitly accuse him, not at first, but I would ask questions that danced around the truth, questions that to an innocent ear would sound perfectly normal, but to him, knowing what he knew, would feel like a tightening noose. I would look for his tells, his reactions. I would make him uncomfortable, make him wonder if I knew. The review was scheduled for 3 p.m. The hours crawled by. My heart hammered in my chest, a relentless drumbeat against my ribs. I reviewed Liam's actual work performance. Objectively, he was good. He was quick to learn, proactive, and genuinely contributed to the team. His project reports were well researched, his presentations clear. He had exceeded expectations in several areas. This made it harder. If he was a terrible intern, the path would be clear. But he wasn't. He was a good employee, a terrible human being. The internal conflict was immense. My professional integrity demanded I review him fairly, based solely on his work. My personal devastation demanded I tear him apart, expose him, ruin him. How do you reconcile those two warring impulses? The answer was, you don't. Strengths, areas for improvement, goals for the next quarter. I filled out the first sections, trying to keep my hands steady. His technical skills were excellent, his teamwork, good, his communication clear. It felt like I was writing a report on an alien. This bright, promising young man was also the architect of my misery. I thought about the power dynamic. I was his boss. I held his future in my hands. I could make his life miserable. I could hint at things, ask leading questions, make him so uncomfortable he'd want to quit. Or I could be the professional, rising above the personal, and perhaps in doing so, regain a shred of my own dignity. But dignity felt like a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I just felt like a broken man, full of rage and sorrow. My boss, Mr. Henderson, popped his head into my office around noon. Everything set for the intern review, Mark? Liam seems like a sharp kid. Good hire. He is, I said, my voice tight. He's very sharp. Sharper than I gave him credit for, certainly. Sharp enough to worm his way into my life and my wife's bed. Henderson nodded, oblivious. Great. Keep up the good work. Don't go easy on him, though. Set high expectations. Set high expectations. The words echoed in my mind. I certainly would, but not in the way Mr. Henderson meant. My expectations for Liam, for Sarah, for my life had been shattered into a million pieces. And now, in that small glass-walled room, I would pick up the shards and try to use them, one way or another. The clock kept ticking relentlessly. Towards 3 p.m. My stomach was a tight knot. The performance review wasn't just about Liam's future. It was about mine, and I was going to make sure he knew it. The afternoon crawled by, each minute a heavy stone dragging me closer to the dreaded 3 p.m. meeting. My mind, despite my best efforts to control it, kept circling back to Sarah. The image of her walking into Liam's house, her hand in his, played on a loop. It was a fresh wound, constantly reopening. But beneath the sharp pain of betrayal, a different, more nuanced emotion began to surface. A chilling curiosity about her perspective. Why Liam? Why now? What was it about our marriage that had pushed her to this point? I hated her in that moment, truly hated the betrayal. But a part of me, the part that still loved her, however broken that love was, wanted to understand. I thought about our interactions over the past few months. She had been more distant, yes. Her phone was practically glued to her hand. She'd spend more time locked in the spare bedroom, which she'd recently converted into a meditation space. I dismissed it as her finding new hobbies, a healthy outlet. Now it felt like a secret rendezvous point for whispered calls or texts. She had also been more critical of me. Small things at first. My messy desk, the way I chewed my food, my tendency to get absorbed in work. Then it escalated to bigger things. My lack of emotional availability, my perceived disinterest in her life, my long hours. I had always brushed them off as typical marital spats, the kind of things couples argue about after years together. Now they seemed like justifications, groundwork being laid for an inevitable separation, or, more accurately, for her to justify her actions to herself. Had I really been that bad a husband? The question was a bitter pill. I worked hard, I provided for us. I tried to be supportive. But had I listened, truly listened? Had I been present, emotionally, when she needed me? Or had I been too caught up in my own professional climb, too exhausted by the demands of my job, to notice her slipping away? I remembered a conversation from a few months ago. We were having dinner, a rare quiet evening at home. She had been talking about her volunteer work at the local animal shelter. How fulfilling it was, how she felt like she was making a real difference. I'd nodded, offered generic, encouraging remarks, but my mind had been elsewhere, probably still replaying a difficult meeting or anticipating a looming deadline. She'd paused, looked at me and said, "Are you even listening, Mark?" I'd mumbled an apology, promised to pay better attention, but had I? Or had I just gone back to my thoughts, leaving her feeling unheard, unvalued? Liam, in contrast, was young. He probably had endless energy. He probably hung on her every word. He probably made her feel vibrant and alive, the way she used to be. He probably looked at her with admiration, not just comfortable familiarity. He probably reminded her of a younger version of herself, full of dreams and possibilities. That thought, though agonizing, was also chillingly logical. He offered her something I, in my exhaustion and routine, no longer could. This wasn't to excuse her. Betrayal was betrayal. but it allowed for a sliver of understanding, a glimpse into the emotional landscape that might have led her to this precipice. It didn't make the pain less, but it added a layer of complexity to the raw anger. And what about Liam? Was he a predator, specifically targeting older, married women? Or was he just a young man, swept up in a situation he didn't fully understand? I leaned towards the latter. He was an intern, ambitious, eager. He likely saw Sarah as an exciting forbidden fruit, perhaps a sophisticated older woman who paid him attention, boosted his ego. He might not have even considered the collateral damage, the person whose life he was casually dismantling. He was probably just focused on the thrill, the excitement of a secret affair. Young people often don't think about consequences, not in the long term. The thought of his casual disregard for the impact of his actions made my blood boil again. He was in my house eating my food, sleeping with my wife, and then coming to my office, sitting at a desk I provided, collecting a paycheck I authorized. The sheer audacity, the brazenness of it was almost unbelievable. He wasn't just screwing my wife, he was screwing with my entire life, my professional standing, my sense of self. My plan for the review still felt like walking a tightrope. I couldn't lose my temper. I couldn't let personal emotions dictate professional decisions. But I couldn't let him walk away thinking he had gotten away with it either. I had to plant the seed of doubt, the terrifying suspicion that I knew without actually saying it. I had to make him sweat. I had to make him understand that his actions had consequences, even if he didn't realize them yet. I glanced at the clock again. 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes until the review. My heart was pounding, a wild drumbeat against my ribs. My palms were sweaty. I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. This wasn't just a performance review anymore. This was a battleground, and I was going into it armed with nothing but my shattered heart and a desperate need for some kind of justice. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This was it, the moment of truth. I had to be strong. I had to be clear. I had to maintain control for my sake, for whatever was left of my sanity. I stood up, smoothing down my shirt, and walked towards the small conference room. Liam was already there, waiting, a confident smile on his face. He still had no idea what was coming. And for a brief chilling moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The walk to the conference room felt like a death march. Every step was heavy, filled with dread and a strange, cold resolve. Liam was already inside, sitting patiently at the polished table, a notepad and pen neatly placed in front of him. He looked up when I entered, his smile easy and unforced. "Hey, Mark, ready when you are." His relaxed demeanor was infuriating. Did he have no conscience, no inkling of the storm brewing inside me? Or was he truly just that good at compartmentalizing, separating his secret life from his professional one? My money was on the latter. He was young, probably felt invincible. I sat down opposite him, the table a wide, neutral expanse between us. The room was small, with glass walls looking out into the bustling office. A fishbowl. Everyone passing by could see us, but they couldn't hear us. It was a perfect, contained space for my personal torment. "Thanks for coming in, Liam," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. It was the voice I used for important client meetings, calm and authoritative. "As you know, it's time for your first performance review. A chance to discuss your progress, what you've learned, and set some goals moving forward." He nodded, still smiling. "Sounds good." I opened the folder I'd prepared, the one containing the standard performance review form. My hands were trembling slightly, but I kept them below the table, out of his sight. I had spent hours last night after Sarah had fallen asleep, or pretended to, poring over his actual work. Objectively, I couldn't fault him. His initial project, a market analysis for our new product line, was thorough and insightful. He'd shown initiative, going beyond the basic requirements, researching competitor strategies I hadn't even considered. His presentations were articulate, his ideas fresh. He'd even taken on extra tasks without being asked, genuinely eager to contribute. The forms reflected this. Under strengths I had listed strong analytical skills, proactive approach, excellent communication. Under areas for development, I had to dig deep to find anything substantial. Maybe time management in multi-project scenarios, which was a stretch, given he'd handled everything thrown at him. I had to be careful not to make it look like I was picking at straws. Professionalism was key, even in this deeply personal war. I started with the positive feedback, reading from the form, my voice calm, almost detached. Liam, your work on the X project was particularly impressive. Your analysis of consumer trends was insightful, and your recommendations for our target demographic were spot on. You clearly put a lot of thought and effort into it. He nodded, a slight flush of pride on his face. Thanks, Mark. I really enjoyed that one. It was a good challenge. And your ability to pick up new software, like the data visualization tool, was commendable. You surpassed expectations. There you are, a fast learner, and that's a valuable asset. I continued in this vein for several minutes, ticking off boxes, citing examples of his good work. It felt surreal, like I was playing a character in a play, praising the very person who was tearing my life apart. Every positive word felt like a lie, a betrayal of my own pain. But I had to maintain the illusion, at least for now. Then I moved to areas for development. Now, Liam, as with any role, there are always opportunities to grow. While your overall performance is strong, I've noted a slight tendency to over-engineer solutions. Sometimes a simpler approach is more effective. It's about efficiency. I watched his face. He nodded, taking notes. He was still in professional mode, eager to learn, eager to impress. Also, I continued, leaning forward slightly, making eye contact, while your enthusiasm is great, sometimes you could benefit from a little more caution when dealing with sensitive information or situations. It's important to always be mindful of boundaries, both professional and personal, especially in a corporate environment. Things can get complicated quickly if lines are blurred. His pen paused over his notepad. His gaze flickered for a fraction of a second. Did he register the double meaning? Did he catch the subtle shift in my tone, the slight emphasis on boundaries and complicated? His expression remained neutral, but I felt a tiny tremor in the air, an almost imperceptible ripple in his composure. He wrote something down. Right, he said, his voice a little less confident than before. Boundary awareness. Got it. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Good, I replied, a small, grim satisfaction blooming in my chest. He was starting to get it. Or at least he was starting to feel something, a prickle of unease. I steered the conversation back to more mundane work topics for a few minutes, discussing future projects, his long-term career goals. He answered thoughtfully, articulating his ambition. Talked about wanting to climb the corporate ladder, about wanting to make a name for himself. He wanted to be successful, respected. The irony was almost unbearable. He was willing to risk all of that for a fleeting secret affair. I looked down at my notes, then back at him. My heart was pounding. This was it, the moment I had prepared for. The true test of my resolve and his composure. I had to ask the question that would shatter his carefully constructed facade. Without actually revealing my hand. Liam, I began, my voice low, serious. Here is one more thing I want to discuss. Something that falls under the umbrella of professional conduct, but also touches on broader personal responsibility. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. He looked at me, a polite, expectant expression on his face, but I could see it now. The subtle tension around his eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. He was starting to sense that this was different. In a professional setting, trust is paramount, I continued, choosing my words carefully, deliberately. Trust between colleagues, between employees and management, and indeed trust within the broader professional community. Any action, personal or professional, that erodes that trust or creates a conflict of interest can have severe repercussions, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire organization. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your personal life might be, or could potentially be, in conflict with your professional duties or the company's best interest? His polite expression dissolved. His eyes widened, just for a moment. His gaze flickered to the glass wall, then back to me. An unreadable mix of confusion and dawning fear in their depths. The pen in his hand was still. He swallowed hard. The silence stretched thick and heavy in the small room. The trap was set. Now I waited for him to step into it. The silence in the conference room stretched thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the office. Liam stared at me, his eyes wide. A flicker of something unreadable, fear, confusion, perhaps even a hint of recognition, passing through them. The easy confidence he had exuded moments earlier had evaporated, replaced by a tense stillness. He started, clearing his throat. I am not sure I understand, Mark. Conflict of interest? I maintained my steady gaze, not giving an inch. Exactly, Liam. A situation where personal relationships or interests might compromise professional objectivity or responsibilities. It's a serious ethical consideration. Sometimes, people can get drawn into situations they don't fully comprehend, or they might underestimate the impact of their actions. My voice was calm, almost soothing, but each word was a carefully aimed arrow. He swallowed again, his Adam's apple bobbing. His gaze darted around the room, as if searching for an escape route. He started to fidget with the pen in his hand, a small, nervous habit. No, I don't think so, he stammered, his voice noticeably less assured than before. I mean, my personal life is pretty straightforward. I'm just here to work, to learn. Right, I said. A slight, almost imperceptible tilt of my head, and that's commendable. But sometimes, even innocent actions can have unforeseen consequences. Imagine a scenario where a professional relationship becomes entangled with something personal, or where someone in a position of trust, unknowingly or knowingly, compromises that trust. What are your thoughts on that, Liam? How would you handle such a situation? Hypothetically speaking. He gripped the pen tighter. His face was starting to pale, the youthful color draining away. He was no longer just an intern undergoing a review. He was a deer caught in headlights, he knew. Or at least he suspected. The implication of my words was finally reaching him, slowly, painfully. Well, he began, struggling to find his footing. I guess it would depend on the situation. But, I think transparency would be key. And maybe like ending any, problematic relationships that could cause a conflict. Professionalism first, right? I echoed, my voice flat. That's a good principle. But sometimes people find themselves in situations where they've already crossed lines, and then it becomes a question of damage control, or even of how to avoid further damage. I paused, letting the unspoken words hang in the air. Have you ever been involved in a relationship, perhaps with someone connected to your professional circle, that might be considered inappropriate or that could lead to a breach of trust? His eyes locked onto mine. This was it. The direct hit, cloaked in professional jargon. His jaw tightened. A bead of sweat formed on his temple. "No," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "No, I haven't. Not that I can think of." But his eyes, they betrayed him. They were wide with a desperate, terrified plea. He was lying, and he knew I knew. "Are you certain, Liam?" I pressed my voice low, my gaze unwavering. "'Cause integrity and honesty are fundamental pillars of our company's values. Any deception, any hidden agenda, any action that undermines the trust we place in our employees is something we take extremely seriously." He shook his head. A small, almost imperceptible movement. I am certain. I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize my position here. I really value this internship, Mark. I've learned so much. His voice was hoarse, strained. Confident, charming intern was gone, replaced by a nervous, cornered boy. I leaned back in my chair watching him, letting him squirm. The silence was agonizing for him, but for me it was a dark, perverse satisfaction. He was finally feeling some of the discomfort, some of the fear, that I had been living with for days. "Good to hear," I said, a hint of something cold in my tone. "'Cause what you do outside of these walls, Liam, reflects on you. It reflects on your judgment. And ultimately, it reflects on your future." I picked up the performance review form, flipping to the final page where the overall assessment and recommendations were made. I deliberately let my gaze linger on the empty space for overall performance rating. "Let's move on to goals for the next quarter," I continued. A sudden shift in topic that caught him off guard. He visibly flinched. "I want you to focus on expanding your network within the company. Get to know more people, understand different departments, maybe even shadow some of the senior managers." I paused, then added, my voice dropping slightly, "And remember, Liam, always be mindful of the company's image and your own. A good reputation takes years to build, but only a moment to destroy." He nodded quickly, furiously, still unable to meet my eyes for more than a second. He scribbled something on his notepad, though his hand was shaking. He knew. He absolutely knew. Color had completely drained from his face, leaving it ashen. I had him. Not explicitly, not with a direct accusation, but I had him cornered. He was reeling, trying to process what had just happened, trying to figure out how much I knew and what I was going to do. Professional veneer of the performance review was barely holding, stretched thin over a chasm of personal betrayal. The air in the small room crackled with unspoken tension. And as I looked at him, truly looked at him, this young man who had so casually entered my life and begun to dismantle it, I felt a terrible, overwhelming mix of anger, sorrow, and a chilling resolve. The review was far from over. The air in the conference room was thick, charged with the unspoken. Liam sat rigidly across from me, his initial composure completely shattered. He kept his head down, pretending to take notes, but his pen was still, and his eyes darted nervously between the notepad and my face. The subtle shift in the conversation, from hypothetical ethics to pointed questions about relationships and consequences, had clearly unhinged him. I decided to press further, to peel back another layer, to make him feel the full weight of his actions. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a near whisper, ensuring no one outside the glass-walled room could hear us. "Liam," I said, His name a low hum. We've discussed the professional aspects of your role, and overall your technical performance is strong. But here is a deeper layer to being a valuable team member, especially in a leadership-focused environment like ours. It's about character, it's about judgment, and it's about the kind of person you are, not just the kind of work you produce. He finally looked up, his eyes wide and scared, like a trapped animal. The youthful arrogance I noticed on his first day was completely gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability. I understand, Mark. Do you though? I countered, my voice laced with a cold challenge. Because sometimes people make choices that seem harmless in the moment. Choices that are purely for personal gratification, without fully considering the domino effect. They might think they're being clever, or that their actions will remain hidden. But secrets, Liam, have a way of coming out, especially when those secrets involve someone else's life, someone else's trust, someone else's family. His face paled further. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No denial, no attempt to feign ignorance. He was caught. The realization was dawning on him, slow and agonizing, that I wasn't just talking about abstract ethics anymore. I was talking about her and us. Kind of behavior I am referring to, I continued, pressing the advantage. It's not just about a breach of company policy. It's about a breach of a fundamental human code. It speaks to a lack of respect for others, for their commitments, for their very being. I paused, letting my gaze bore into him. When you knowingly engage in a relationship that has the potential to devastate lives, to destroy a family, what does that say about your character, Liam? What does that say about your judgment? His breath hitched. He finally spoke, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean to. It just happened. It just happened. I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Relationships don't just happen when they involve married people. There are choices made. Decisions. Calculations. You knew she was married, didn't you, Liam? You knew she had a life, a husband, a home. And you still chose to pursue it, to facilitate it. He flinched as if struck. His eyes filled with something unreadable, maybe shame, maybe regret. I know. I am sorry. The apology sounded hollow, forced. Sorry for what, Liam? I pushed. Sorry you got caught. Or sorry for the devastation you've caused, because here is a world of difference. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, then opened them, and for the first time he looked truly desperate. I didn't think you'd find out, she said. She said her marriage was over, that you were just roommates, that you were already separated in everything but name. The words hit me like a physical blow. She said that. My voice was low, dangerous. She painted me as the villain, the emotionally distant husband to justify her own choices, to make her betrayal easier to stomach. My anger, which I had tried so hard to contain, was beginning to boil over. Liam nodded miserably. She said you barely spoke, that you never touched her, that she felt lonely and invisible. She said you didn't care anymore. Tidal wave of emotion crashed over me. Fury at Sarah for her lies. Agonizing pain at the accuracy of some of her accusations. And a cold, terrible understanding of how easily he had been drawn in. She had manipulated him too, making herself out to be a victim, thereby absolving him of any true guilt. But he was still complicit. He still made the choice. So, you believed her? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You believed the story of the poor neglected wife, and you, the knight in shining armor, swooped in to rescue her, despite the fact that she was still living in my house, wearing my ring, sharing my life. He lowered his head again, unable to meet my gaze. I I just wanted to make her happy. She seemed so unhappy. And what about my happiness, Liam? I hissed, leaning further across the table. What about the happiness of the man whose home you invaded, whose life you tried to steal? Did that ever cross your mind? Or were you too busy enjoying the thrill of a forbidden affair, the ego boost of being with an older, unhappy woman? He remained silent, shrinking in his seat. The brave, confident intern was utterly broken. The raw truth of his actions and their devastating consequences was finally hitting him. This isn't just about a performance review anymore, Liam, I said, my voice cold and hard. This is about professional ethics. This is about personal integrity. And this is about the complete disregard you've shown for other human beings. The trust you've shattered, not just mine, but potentially the trust of this entire company. What kind of person does that make you? He looked up, his eyes pleading. Mark, please. I messed up. I know, I really screwed up. Please don't fire me for this, I'll end it. I swear, I'll never see her again. Just, please. His desperation was palpable, but it brought me no satisfaction. Only a hollow ache. The damage was done. The betrayal was real. And his pathetic pleas felt like an insult to the depth of my pain. I had pushed him to the brink, stripped away his defenses, and revealed the cowardice beneath. But it didn't feel like a victory. It just felt like the end of something. And I still had one more thing to do. The air in the room crackled with the raw emotion that had finally erupted. Liam sat slumped, his face pale, his youthful confidence completely gone. He was a boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Except the cookie jar was my entire life. Please, Mark, he whispered again, his voice raw with desperation. I'll do anything. I'll resign. I'll leave the state. Just don't. Don't tell anyone. Don't make a scene. I am so sorry. Sorry. I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion, though my insides churned. You are sorry now because you are caught. Not because of what you did. You think a simple "I am sorry" or a quiet resignation can undo the damage you've caused. Do you have any idea what you've done, Liam? He just shook his head, looking utterly miserable. You didn't just sleep with my wife, I continued, my voice low and steady, each word a hammer blow. You infiltrated my life. You sat at a desk I provided. You took a paycheck from a company I helped run. You pretended to be a diligent intern, all while secretly dismantling my home, my family, my future. You violated every single boundary, every single trust, both professional and personal. His shoulders slumped. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot, a mixture of fear and something akin to actual remorse finally showing. I know, I was stupid. I wasn't thinking, she said. She made it seem like you guys were already done. Like I wasn't really breaking anything up. Just helping her move on. And you believed her, I scoffed, the bitterness rising in my throat. Convenient, wasn't it? To believe the narrative that absolved you of responsibility. To ignore the obvious signs that she was still a married woman, still living with her husband. You didn't just happen into this, Liam. You chose it. Every text, every meeting, every time you walked into my house or brought her into yours, you made a choice. And those choices have consequences. I leaned back, taking a deep, ragged breath. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was now laced with an unbearable exhaustion. The confrontation had drained me more than I anticipated. I had broken him, yes, but it hadn't given me the satisfaction I thought it would. Only a profound emptiness. So what happens now? Liam asked, his voice barely audible. He looked utterly defeated. That's a very good question, I replied, my gaze hardening. And it's a question we're going to address. You mentioned resigning. Is that what you want, Liam? To walk away, pretend none of this happened, and leave the mess behind? He nodded eager. Yes, if that's what it takes. I'll go today. I'll pack my things. I'll just disappear. No, I said, a chilling calm in my voice. Not just yet. Because this isn't just about your convenience, Liam. This is about accountability. And it's about the company's integrity. He looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, I stated, my voice firm, that you will finish out your day. You will appear normal. And you will be officially dismissed at the end of the week. For performance-related issues that I will document thoroughly. Your lack of judgment, your inability to adhere to company ethics regarding personal conduct, and the creation of an unacceptable conflict of interest will be clearly noted. It will not be a resignation. It will be a termination. His eyes widened in horror. Termination? But that will go on my record. It will ruin my career before it even starts. Precisely, I said, without a trace of remorse. Actions have consequences, Liam. You wanted to make a name for yourself. This is how you'll start. It's a hard lesson, but perhaps one you desperately need to learn. You were so eager to play games with other people's lives. Now you get to experience the fallout in your own. This isn't about vengeance, Liam. It's about ensuring that your casual disregard for others comes with a price. A real, tangible price. He slumped back in his chair, utterly defeated. His face crumpled, and I saw for the first time not the cocky young man, but the scared kid he truly was. A single tear escaped his eye and tracked a path down his cheek. But I'll never get another job. My resume. Then perhaps you'll have to consider how your actions affect others, and what kind of person you truly want to be. I said, my voice cold. This isn't a game, Liam. This is life. And you just blew up a big part of mine. What happens to your career is now the least of my concerns. I pushed the performance review form across the table to him. Sign it, I commanded, acknowledging that we've discussed your performance and areas for improvement. Do not try to argue. Do not try to argue. Do not try to negotiate. This is simply documentation. The official reason for your termination will be based on these areas for improvement, combined with a serious breach of professional ethics, which I will outline in a separate confidential report for HR. He stared at the form, his hand trembling as he picked up the pen. He was trapped. He knew it. He had no leverage. He signed with a shaky hand, his signature almost illegible. Good, I said, taking the form back. You will be here for the rest of the week acting professionally. If here is any sign of anything less than that, if you try to cause trouble, if you try to talk to anyone about this, your termination will be immediate and with cause. And I will ensure that every single detail of your misconduct is communicated to any future employer who asks for a reference. Do we understand each other? He nodded, a defeated slump to his shoulders. Yes, Mark, I understand. The performance review was officially over. The professional charade was maintained, at least on paper. But the truth had been spoken, the cards laid bare, and the consequences delivered. I had done what I set out to do. I had faced him. I had broken him. But as I looked at the broken young man across from me, a deep, bitter taste filled my mouth. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like another shard of my broken life. And now, the hardest part still awaited me. The confrontation at home, with Sarah, the one who had started it all. The aftermath of the performance review left me strangely hollowed out, like a carved pumpkin after Halloween. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the confrontation with Liam slowly drained away, leaving behind a vast, aching emptiness. He had left the conference room, a ghost of his former self, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and simply stared at his computer screen, not typing, not moving. He was broken, and I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound weariness. The rest of the workday was a blur. Colleagues occasionally popped by asking about the review. How'd it go with Liam? Good kid, right? I offered vague, non-committal answers. He's got potential. We discussed some areas for growth. The lies felt like acid on my tongue, but I maintained the facade. I had, not for Liam, but for myself, for what little professional integrity I had left. My boss, Mr. Henderson, even stopped by my office later. So the intern review, Mark. How did our young superstar do? I forced a tight smile. He did well, generally. But there are some significant areas of concern regarding judgment and professional conduct. Nothing that merits immediate dismissal, but enough to warrant a formal warning and a plan for improvement. We'll be letting him go at the end of the week, once we've completed the necessary paperwork and HR procedures. It's better for all involved that we part ways after his initial internship period, given some underlying issues. I kept my voice neutral, professional, vague enough to avoid questions, specific enough to explain his upcoming departure. Henderson raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise. Oh, that's a shame. He seemed promising. Well, you know best, Mark. You are the one managing him. Make sure it's handled by the book. Absolutely, I confirmed, my jaw tight. By the book. My own bloody book. The day ended as a long, drawn-out agony. I watched Liam from my desk. He barely interacted with anyone, only mumbled responses when spoken to. He looked like he was walking through quicksand. Quiet devastation emanating from his direction was almost palpable. It was a cold comfort, knowing he was suffering, but it didn't ease my own pain. It just added another layer of grim reality to the mess. When 5 p.m. finally arrived, I packed my bag mechanically, my mind already racing ahead to the inevitable confrontation at home. This was the bigger beast, the one I had been dreading. Liam was a casualty, an unwilling participant in Sarah's choices. Sarah was the architect of my current hell. I drove home slowly, the city lights a blur. The familiar route felt foreign, alien. The house, which had once been a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, a place where secrets festered and love had died. My stomach clenched tighter with every mile. I pulled into the driveway, the engine idling for a moment too long. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. This was it. No more hiding, no more pretending. The truth had to come out. I walked into the house. The smell of something cooking, chicken and vegetables, filled the air. A normal evening scene. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she stirred a pot on the stove. She looked up when I entered, a casual smile on her face. "Hey, honey. Rough day?" she asked without looking away from the stove. Her voice was light, cheerful. The same voice she used when she was talking to Liam on the phone. The same voice she used when she was lying to me. I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, my briefcase still in my hand. My voice was a stranger's, rough and flat. "Yeah, you could say that. I had Liam's performance review today." She stopped stirring. Her humming died. Her back stiffened just imperceptibly. "Oh, how did that go?" Her voice was still light, but a tiny thread of tension had crept in. "It was illuminating," I said, my gaze fixed on her back. "We discussed a lot of things, his work performance, his professional conduct, and his personal life. She slowly turned around, her face carefully blank. But I could see it now, the tightening around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped the spoon. She knew she had to. Liam must have contacted her. "What do you mean, his personal life?" she asked, her voice a little too casual, a little too innocent. I dropped my briefcase to the floor with a thud that echoed in the suddenly silent house. I walked towards her slowly, deliberately, until I was standing directly in front of her, close enough to see the fear dawning in her eyes. I said, my voice low, dangerous. "That he confirmed it, Sarah. He confirmed it, Sarah. He confirmed that you've been sleeping with him. My intern, my employee, the boy I hired to work for me." Her face went utterly white. The spoon clattered to the floor, splashing sauce across the clean tile. "Mark, no, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. He's just an intern." "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I commanded, my voice rising, raw with emotion. "Not anymore. I followed you on Saturday. I saw you walk into his house hand in hand. I saw you laugh with him, a laugh I haven't heard from you in years. I saw my entire life crumble into dust right before my eyes." She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock and a terrifying realization. The denial died on her lips. She looked away, unable to meet my gaze, her shoulders shaking. The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, punctuated only by the drip of sauce from the fallen spoon, and Sarah's ragged breathing. Her face was ashen, her body trembling. Carefully constructed facade she had maintained for weeks, perhaps months, had finally shattered. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can explain." "Explain what, Sarah?" I demanded, my voice raw with the agony of betrayal. "Explain why you chose to betray our marriage of 10 years, our 15 years together, with a kid half my age. Explain why you lied to me, day after day while he sat 2 desks away from me. Explain how you could do this to us, to me." She finally looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears, but also with a strange mix of defiance and self-pity. "I was unhappy, Mark. So unhappy. You were never around. You were always at work, always distant. I felt invisible, unloved. We stopped talking, truly talking. We stopped being intimate. I was lonely." The words, though painful, were not entirely unexpected. They echoed Liam's earlier confession, the narrative she had spun to justify her actions. But hearing them from her now felt like a fresh wound. "And so you decided to cheat?" I countered, my voice laced with venom. "That was your solution? Not talk to me, not try to fix things, not ask for help, but to find a boy and sneak around behind my back, and with my intern no less. The sheer audacity, Sarah, the disrespect, is beyond anything I could have imagined." Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't break eye contact. "He listened to me, Mark. He made me feel alive again. He reminded me of who I used to be. You stopped seeing me years ago. I was desperate for something, anything to feel like I existed." "So you used him?" I said, the realization hitting me with cold clarity. "And you used me?" "You manipulated him, told him our marriage was dead, so he wouldn't feel guilty. You made yourself a victim to justify your own selfishness." She recoiled as if struck. "It wasn't like that, it just got out of control. I never meant to hurt you." "Never meant to hurt me?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You systematically dismantled my life, piece by agonizing piece. And you never meant to hurt me." Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was that stupid, that blind? I don't know what I thought, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I just wanted to feel something again. And he was there. He was kind. He paid attention. And what about me, Sarah? I asked, my voice breaking. What about the man who stood by you for 15 years? Who built a life with you? Who loved you? Was I so easily disposable? Was our entire history worth nothing? The silence stretched again, filled only by her muffled sobs. The anger, the pain, the profound sense of betrayal was overwhelming. My body shook with the force of... This is it, Sarah, I said, my voice thick with emotion but firm. I can't do this. I can't live in this lie anymore. I can't look at you and not see him. I can't be in this house and not feel your betrayal clinging to every wall. She lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen. What are you saying? I am saying it's over, I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Our marriage, our life together, it's done. Her eyes widened in horror. No, Mark, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll break it off with him, I swear. Just please, don't leave me. She took a step towards me, her hand outstretched. I recoiled. Fix this? How do you fix this, Sarah? How do you fix this, Sarah? How do you unsee what I saw? How do you unfeel this level of betrayal? How do you rebuild trust when the foundation has been shattered into a million pieces? I look at you and I see him. I look at our home and I see his house. Here is no coming back from this. But what about our life? She pleaded, her voice desperate. Our plans, everything we built. You destroyed it, Sarah, I said, my voice devoid of emotion now, just a cold, hard fact. You set fire to everything we built. And now I have to walk away from the ashes. I turned, walked over to the counter, and picked up my car keys. My hands were steady now. The decision, though agonizing, brought with it a strange, grim clarity. Pain was still immense, but the uncertainty, the agonizing dread was gone. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, I said, not looking at her. We'll need to figure out the logistics for separation. I'll contact a lawyer tomorrow. You can stay here for now. We'll divide everything fairly. Mark, no, she cried, rushing forward and grabbing my arm. Please don't do this. I still love you. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. Her touch felt alien, tainted. No, Sarah, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Repeatedly, and that choice cost us everything. I walked to the front door, pausing only to retrieve my briefcase. The house was silent again, save for her ragged sobs. I looked back at her, standing amidst the ruins of our kitchen, the unmade dinner on the stove. She looked small, broken, alone. But my heart, though shattered, was no longer capable of pity. I opened the door and walked out into the cool night air. The stars were bright, indifferent to the human drama unfolding beneath them. I got into my car and started the engine. As I drove away, I didn't look back. The marriage was over. My world had imploded. But in the shattered pieces, a new terrifyingly uncertain path lay ahead. I was broken, yes, but I was finally free of the lie. And that, in itself, was a beginning. A painful, agonizing, but necessary beginning.